You're listening to the RITE Retirement Show.
70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Chris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the RITE Retirement Show.
Hi, I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, and welcome to the RITE Retirement Show with certified financial planner and financial advisor Chris Wallace. He's president of WG Financial Group, and also joining us, Graham Bauer. He's a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and enrolled agent at the firm. Both here today to give us some really good advice about retirement planning. Here's the way to reach out to Chris and our team, and it is complimentary. 256-937-2010. Now, you can call that number or you can text the word visit to 256-937-2010. And you'll get a complimentary discovery session to see, where you are. Are you ready to retire and get your questions answered? Remember to check us out on Facebook throughout the week, WG Financial Group 256, our motto, plan, retire, and play, and the website, WGFinancialGroup.com. Remember, this show is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search for The RITE Retirement Show. Chris and Graham, so excited to be here with you guys today.
Hey, we're glad to be here as well, Lou Ann. I'm glad to be back, actually.
Yes. Welcome back to the US of A.
Yes. So it's a fun trip. I did catch the opening to your show last week that Graham did. And he said I was in grizzly bear country.
Yeah. Did you see any?
No, we saw a black bear. But we did not see a grizzly bear. Jen made fun of me because I bought bear spray.
No way.
Do you have it in like a fanny pack belt?
Oh, no. That's hilarious.
I asked her to carry it.
Okay.
But no, that's real. Truthfully, I did buy some. I was a little nervous at first, but you're around a lot of people, so
you're like, people are here, so yeah.
Yeah,
you
don't have
alone.
to worry. We weren't off in a deep trail.
That is hilarious.
By ourselves.
Oh my gosh, Chris, that's so fun. You should have used those little sticks. Click those sticks together like in Parent Trap. That's supposed to help the bears. Remember that? The movie Parent Trap?
Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. But I'd be too afraid that that's a movie that wouldn't work and they'd still come after me.
Yeah, I know.
So, I'm kind of a tall and, decent sized guy or whatever, but you're no match for a grizzly bear.
Nope.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, you can also, just as other travelers are walking past you, you can put a little raw meat on their back or something in case a bear does come around. You're not going to seem like the most attractive option.
Yeah, or some berries. They eat berries.
Yeah, or berries.
They
That'd
do?
probably be less creepy.
Yeah. So it was fun. So we went to Banff. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's BANFF. BANFF. So one of my advisors on the team said, I thought you were saying Banff with an M. And I said, well, I probably was because I'm from the South. And it's just easier to say than to go Banff.
Banff.
It's just,
Banff.
So, but it's beautiful up there. I had some pictures on my Facebook page where the water is, it's the bluest water I've ever seen. And the pictures, Graham's seen them. It looks fake. Like it looks like I put a filter and it's not a filter. It's just the way the water looks. I'll throw one out on the company page so people can see that.
You should. Yeah. It sounds beautiful there.
Yeah. Highly recommend it if you are travelers in retirement. That's definitely an area you want to go. The western side of the United States is gorgeous. This western side of Canada is gorgeous. And I know there's been a lot of political stuff, between Canada and the U.S. or whatever. People were really nice. We had a great time. We did have a little bit of an experience coming back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One that I really don't want to have again, to be honest with you.
What?
So we're on the plane and we got a direct flight actually out of Nashville. So we flew out of Nashville, got a direct flight there and back. So we're leaving Calgary. We're probably about halfway home and I'm sitting there with my headphones on and Jen's reading and I smell something that's burning.
Oh, no.
I smell something burning and I'm like, okay, I worked at Delta right out of high school, so I know what the ovens smell like. The ovens, when they open them up, they have this very distinct smell.
Okay.
I've cleaned more ovens and lavatories on a plane than you ever even care to know.
Wow.
So I know exactly what they smell like. So this was not the oven.
Oh.
I was like, something's burning.
Oh, no.
And I look at Jen, she's reading. I'm like, I look at her again, she's still reading. And I looked at her the third time, I said, something's wrong. And she's like looking at me funny. And about that time, this flight attendant comes up to the front of the plane. Looks like she's seen a ghost.
What?
Yeah, so they're up there whispering. I'm watching their face. They have this serious look on their face.
Crap.
And I'm like, something's on fire. And is this it? You know,
Yeah.
is the plane going to go down?
Oh my goodness.
I won't say the airline. No, I won't say that at all. But so anyway, they talked and then finally the smell started to dissipate, and I overheard them because I was really trying to listen.
You were tuned in.
Yeah, I was really tuned in. They, I guess, turned a panel off or something, and the smell started to go away. So there was definitely something, probably a wire burning, because whatever they turned off stopped it. And by this time, like I said, we're probably, I don't know, halfway, a little more than halfway. And they're like, yeah, was something on the plane burning. We think it's under control. We're gonna turn around and we're gonna head back to Winnipeg. So we fly all the way back to Winnipeg, which oddly enough was only about 40 minutes, just how we were geographically. I thought we were closer to Minneapolis. So I was really hoping we would swing in there and I'd see maybe a couple Vikings players or whatever. We flew back to Winnipeg and then ended up, long story short, everything was fine. We didn't get back on that plane. There was no way on God's green earth was I getting back on that particular airplane. Right. So we got off, called another airline home, and did get home at midnight that night.
Goodness sakes, that is scary. That's quite a scare.
Yeah, I never want to be on a plane when you smell burning.
No,
I get freaked out anytime I just hear a noise that's a little too loud on the plane, let alone a burning smell.
Yeah.
So I'm texting my sons, like, hey guys, I bought Jen and I first class tickets. They rode in coach. And I'm like texting them, and they slept through the whole thing. They slept through the whole thing. I was like, okay. So anyway, fun trip. If you get a chance, if you're a traveler, western side of Canada, Alberta, Banff, BANFF is a great place to go. And then, British Columbia, we went to Jasper National Park as well while we were over there. It's awesome. That's where we saw the brown bear.
The one bear.
It was a bear. I don't know. I don't think it was a grizzly, but it was a bear.
Oh my.
We rode by it in the car. So it's great. Like I said, I'll post a couple pictures on our company page so people can see it, but definitely worth checking out.
Oh, good. Well, welcome back to the U.S. So happy to have you back. And Graham, of course, was a pleasure last week. He flew solo again and did quite well. So glad to have you both here today, though, together.
Yeah, it's good. Like I said, good to be back. So let's kind of just do a quick little market update.
Okay.
Not much to report other than that was a really quick World War III. Yeah, it's like over super
right.
Fast,
I don't know what's happening. I haven't seen the news today. I've been away.
Last night, so recording on Tuesday, as everybody knows, and there was a ceasefire, I guess, agreed upon, and then supposedly sometime during the night they broke it, and market seems to have ignored it because the market's up like 1.5% today. Oil's actually down. You would have thought, with this type of stuff going on, you would see the market crash and you would probably see oil skyrocket. I mean, that's what I thought. So all this is taking place on Sunday. Things are getting kind of ugly on Sunday. I'm watching the futures. And this is why I don't manage my own personal money, because in my brain, here's what Chris was thinking. And here's what half of the listeners are thinking too. Oh no, the market's going to crash. Here comes World War III. Russia's going to jump in. China's going to jump in. North Korea's going to jump in. We're going to have this all-out war. The market's about to crash, and oil is going to skyrocket. So what am I thinking? All of that.
Yeah.
Everything I just said. I'm thinking all of that. And then I also thought, well, if oil's going to skyrocket, maybe Monday morning I should buy some oil shares. And oil ended up dropping like 7%.
Isn't that crazy?
All the reason why on the show we preach don't time the market. But even as a human, I'm an advisor, and I still was thinking the same thing. Why? Because I have the same DNA as most of you guys out there. All of you guys. We're all made in God's DNA. But anyway, I'm sitting here thinking the same thing. I should go buy oil, and I would have lost money if I did that. And this is just why you should have a plan, and I do. And this is why I don't touch my money on a day-to-day basis.
You just think you don't do anything, right?
Yeah. I didn't. I didn't pull the trigger on any of it. So I didn't take any of my reserves and do anything crazy like that. So So market update. Market's way up right now.
Okay.
Tuesday, so
good to know. And then next on our agenda is the federal minutes. What do you have for us?
Yeah. So let's Fed minutes. This week I'll make it kind of quick because we did a little bit of a recap of my vacation there. So I want to talk about the TSP. I don't think I've talked about this before. So if I have, it'll be a repeat. Great. Not everybody heard it, so maybe they'll hear it this time. All right. When we talk about TSP, so if you are the spouse of an employee, a federal employee, and that your spouse passes away and you inherit the TSP and you keep it at TSP and you put it in your name at TSP, all of that's fine. The problem becomes when you pass away. There's no way to make that an inherited IRA for your beneficiaries. So let me make an example. I've got, let's say, a male federal employee, male passes away, wife keeps the TSP at TSP, puts it in her name, and then she dies. The kids have to take it in a lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's really bad. That's not a good thing, because that means you're going to have a whole lot of taxes due at the time you have to take that distribution. So you really need to think about these things, especially when you have a TSP and you're the beneficiary of it and you leave it there, because what happens is when a spouse passes away, there's a lot of psychological things that happen. And one of those things that happens is, like, say, for an example, they had a car. You might be inclined not to sell that vehicle for a while, maybe ever, because you're like, that's their car. I can't sell it. It's personal to me and I want to keep it. And I understand all that. I get it. The same thing can happen with like stocks. The same thing can happen with investment accounts. So with like the TSP, to hang on to it, you're really putting the kids in a bad spot because they can't do what's called an inherited IRA. So that's just kind of one of these little unique things that happens with TSP that I just think that surviving spouses need to be aware of, especially if they've kept it at the TSP location. So,
okay.
Yeah. And so, Chris, just to kind of clarify for the listeners, and that was a good explanation. But so, for example, like if spouse passes away, have $750,000 in TSP, they put it in their spouse's name. So it was the deceased spouse's account. Now it's in the surviving spouse's name.
correct.
They die and it passes to a beneficiary. They have to take all of that in
Lump
1
sum.
year, a $750,000 taxable income.
37% tax rate.
Yeah.
Plus 5 or so on state.
Versus, having an inherited IRA and taking it over 10 years.
That's
essentially.
correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one of those oddities about TSP, because you don't see that with a lot of normal 401k accounts.
That's because the TSP is not really a 401k. It's a TSP, but it has a lot of the same, call them rules and behaviors of a 401k, except for that one. I say except, I'm sure there's a couple more, but by and large, that's the big one that you got to know about. And so like, you can just know that surviving spouses, at times will want to hang on to that because that was, my spouse's TSP and I want my kids to get it. Well, they're going to get it. They're going to get it in all the taxes too.
And the taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to think about these things. It is hard. And again, I have not lost a spouse, but I've sat with a ton of people who have, and it's an incredibly sad time, but you still have to try to make good decisions based upon information that you have. And I just thought this was a good one to mention this week. So it ended up taking longer than I thought it would, but it's an important one. There are spouses out there, surviving spouses of federal employees who have rolled the TSP in their name, and they need to hear this.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, some people will sometimes take the stance of, that they maybe don't care quite as much what happens tax wise once they're dead and gone. But I think that comes down to sometimes the conversation I'll have with people where it's like, do you hate paying taxes or do you just hate when you pay taxes? Because there is a distinction between the two things, because, taking a large TSP balance in a lump sum versus a 10-year period, even if you're not alive to see it, that is probably tens of thousands, if not more, depending on your balance, that is going to be saved by your beneficiary, not going to the government, going to your kid or whoever you're inheriting to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
excellent.
It's good stuff, right?
Yeah, good stuff for that. Anybody working for the government. Now, what about real talk? You have something for us today, don't you?
Well, we thought we did.
But
we were looking, because normally I send one out. Sometimes Graham does. Did you have one, Graham? If not, I've got plenty I can talk about right now, because I saw some stuff this week that I thought we should just kind of talk about?
Yeah, I think ours for this week kind of went missing, and
Yep.
that
MIA.
got sent over. Yeah.
We were checking our emails. We were checking our text messages to you, Luann, and so we couldn't find it actually. So
I know. I thought we had something, but I guess it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So, so what I saw this week, I just saw sometimes things get in your cookies and your algorithms on Facebook.
Yes.
We talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
And what I've seen a lot lately is, like tax classes, like come learn the secrets that retirees need to know about lowering your taxes in retirement and stuff like that. And I've seen countless number of advertisements, and it's, come get a meal at the library or come to this location and just learn tax secrets. And I'm like, why do they have to have you come to a meal? Why don't, if you could just listen to us on the air and we'll kind of talk about the things that maybe they might say in the tax class, but there's not, in those types of classes, you're not going to learn some secret that the IRS doesn't know that you know about.
Not a legal one, at least.
At least not a legal one, right? And they're not going to.
They're not going to say anything illegal either, but yeah.
It's been my experience with the individuals that do those types of classes. A lot of them sell life insurance, and one of the quote unquote, I'm doing my quotations here, tax secrets is that you buy this like cash value life insurance and do these Roth conversions, and not Roth conversions. You take pre-tax money and you buy life insurance in order to grow cash value inside the life insurance policy, and then you can turn around and take it tax free, and that's how they kind of sell their product or whatever to you. But that's not the way to do it. In our opinion, that's not the way to do a Roth conversion. So when we're talking about these people doing these types of classes, I see them advertised on Facebook. More than likely, you're going to eventually hear some pitch about universal life insurance or whole life insurance and cash value withdrawals, tax free. So our opinion is, if you're going to do a Roth conversion, that's fine. Roth conversions are fine, and I would say that it could benefit a lot of people. And I think people should be looking at that as these rates continue to be where they are, tax rates, that is. But when you Roth convert, the idea of the Roth conversion is to pay taxes at a lower rate today. And that's really the thought process, is that tax rates are likely to increase in the future, but you should not Roth convert and leave it in a low growth vehicle, in our opinion. We are advocates of if you Roth convert, then you should be more aggressive with your Roth IRA money, because it's growing tax free for yourself. It's growing tax free for your beneficiaries. And, our opinion is to be more aggressive with that. There are rumors, I won't say there's rumors, there are quote unquote strategies, because I had somebody come into my office and they asked me this question: what do you think about putting IRA money into an annuity and using the bonus to offset the taxes on the Roth conversion? And I'm like, terrible idea, horrible. One, I'm not against annuities by no means. I'm against certain types of annuities. But to do a Roth conversion inside of an annuity where you're going to convert and then probably get somewhere around a 4%, maybe 4.5% rate of return, it's going to take you forever to overcome the taxes on that conversion. So I just be careful who you run into and kind of hear things from at these types of classes, because I'm telling you, you have to understand the strings with insurance products. You really do. We use them at the office. We use very specific ones in very specific ways, and we do our best to explain those. But if you're Roth converting it in an annuity, I'm not sure that's a good idea. And when you go to these classes, the people that are teaching them can make this stuff sound really, really good. They really can. And just be careful. That's all I'm saying. So that's kind of the real talk for this week. Real talk as in real.
REEL.
And then REAL too. Like, I'm just giving you real talk here.
Yeah. You're giving us REAL talk, but
yeah, but a little both this week.
Yeah,
a little both.
Yeah. All right. And now let's go to, I'm excited about this. The I can't talk. The Social Security 2025 annual report of the Board of Trustees. And you have notes from this, Chris. I'm excited for this talk.
We do. I think this, I sent you and Graham the PDF. I think it was 200
Oh my gosh.
8 pages or something.
Yeah.
Like that long.
We read every word.
Every word, yes.
Last word. Actually, my friend Chat did.
Yeah.
Your
Chat
friend
GPT.
Chat.
We had a little assistance.
So yeah, we had a
it's
little
not
outline.
Exactly,
Yeah.
It's not exactly light reading.
No, it's not. I
Still
tried.
not.
I got through the first couple pages and fell asleep, and I was like, I'll never finish at this rate.
Yeah, right,
never
right.
finish.
You tried.
Right.
Good job.
So my friend Chat kind of put a summary together for us, and I thought it was really interesting. So first of all, I do want to just kind of talk about just Social Security in general. So
Okay.
this, idea of Social Security being in trouble, this has been around for a long time. And I'm talking about all the way back to the 1950s and 60s, 1970s. They did some reforms in 1982, 1983. And in 1990 or so, they did some additional things by increasing the payroll tax by a little bit. So this is not a new problem. What I think is new here is, and we've talked about this quite a bit, there's just so many different ways to get your news today that it's just all in your face all the time. And it's going to go broke and it's going to go broke and, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, they released information basically saying that by 2033, the program could go broke. It is running at a deficit. And, no, that's not a shocker to anybody. We know that the program needs some reforms. And what we discovered here and putting together the summary is there's several things that they can do. And what I was kind of happy to see, Graham, and you and I talked about this pre-show, that it kind of followed the same stuff that we've been talking about for a while on the show, because this is not the first time we've talked about Social Security and the reforms and the going broke and all of that. But one of the first things that they talk about is potentially increasing the payroll tax. So today, between the individual and the employer, it's 12.4%. So we're looking at an increase of potentially up to 16.05. So a total increase of 3.65%, but that would just be halved, right? So the employer would pick up half and you would pick up half. The net effect is it's a tax increase. And by no means are we sitting here going, yeah, that's what they need to do, because that comes out of my check just like it does yours. But this is something we said all along that this is a likelihood, because there's just not enough money coming in right now to support the system.
Yeah, and this has been done before on some level. Well, obviously there have been many raises, and I think this is something I've thrown out a lot of times on the show because I think it's really interesting to look at historically how but between basically the start of Social Security, but even if you just peel it back to like the 1960s through 1990s, there was raises in Social Security, FICA taxes, really every couple of years at the most. Back in 1961, it was like 3% between the employer and the employee. And by 1990, we're up to the 7.65. Or actually, that's just on the employee side, not including employer.
Yeah, that's including Medicare.
Yeah, that's including Medicare as well. So there was a lot of raises in that time period, and the largest of those being 1983 to 1984, which was between employer employee about the same as the proposed one would be now. And I don't know exactly what all sentiment was like around that at the time, but I think you have to look at it from the standpoint of, that raise of a, basically 1.5% FICA tax raise, leading to 75 more years of solvency in the program. So I honestly don't think that that's going to be the first thing that's done, but it would be an easy way that wouldn't be, I guess I'd say it this way. I think that would be a lot less painful than cutting everyone's benefits by 22%. To be raising taxes a little bit on the front end, even though that, affects me and you and people who are still paying in a little bit more. But rather than saying, okay, we're going to slash 20% of benefits to say, we're going to raise 1.5% employer employee each.
Yeah, the wage cap is what's going to happen first, I think. And I want to say right now it's around, I don't know what it is for 2026 or 2025. I think it's 178,000 roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
is that
things
correct?
Like 176, 178, something like that. Yeah, it's in the high 170s. It goes up, every year. I think it's somewhat indexed to inflation, not like a perfect science, but they do have adjustments to it. But I believe that alone would be 10 or 15 more years of solvency just right there. And, anything that gets proposed here is going to be a little bit politically unpopular among at least some group of people,
Right.
because there's no way to do this without raising taxes a little bit somewhere, pulling off the wage cap, which is essentially raising taxes, but just more so for high income earners, or, cutting benefits. So neither of those are a popular option. I think it just almost comes down to what is the lesser unpopular option, which probably is, the wage cap on the front side, just because it's going to affect less people than just a flat raise on everybody would.
Yeah, and the raise in the wage cap is pretty significant for the high income earner, because at that point, just think about it today, it's 6.2%. So let's just say that you're a high income earner and sometime around August or September, you hit that threshold. So it's 176, 100. So you hit that threshold and you stop paying into Social Security at that point. You continue the Medicare at 1.45, but you essentially get a 6.2% raise for the remainder of the year. So if they raise that to say 400,000 and you make less than 400,000, you're going to pay into Social Security 6.2% the entire time. So it's fairly significant. That's why the increase is there. That's why the increase in years that the program will last is there. We have always said we feel like the likelihood of that happening is very, very likely. I feel like they're going, I don't know that they'll take it all the way off, but I do feel like they'll raise it significantly to capture more dollars going into the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've said this for probably a couple of years now, that I don't see how we cannot have a payroll tax increase. Again, not that I want it, because it's money out of my check too. But if I look at, as Graham kind of noted, I guess you had the Social Security website pulled up, kind of going through the years, because I have the same one pulled up. There was a lot of increases really since Social Security started. At one point, it was like 1%, and now we're at 6.2%. And the last time that the payroll tax was increased was actually back in 1990. That's a long time ago. Again, not advocating for it, but it is a very political thing. And I think that if Social Security is going to continue to survive, then, those couple of things have got to happen, and they've got to happen soon, sometime within the next, I would say, 2 to 4 years. They've got to happen. But to Graham's point, it's going to be very political, because no party, Republican or Democrat, wants to bring that up or even talk about or even have that on their running agenda. But the next go around, when we get to 2028, if nothing's done by then, you got to talk about that, because we're talking 5 years it's done. And I will say this, as we're getting near the end of the first half of the show, Congress will wait till the last minute. That's just how they do things. It's crazy. After 52 years of my life, and I would say a good solid 25 or so being politically paying attention, they just do things at the last minute. And what's going to happen here is the party that's in office at the time will have no choice but to pass something. And then they'll turn around and say, I was part of the party that put forward the bill that saved Social Security.
Yeah, that's
I
what
sound like
say.
a politician, don't I?
Yeah.
Was that good? I think
Yes,
I'm running for office.
very, very.
You couldn't pay me enough to run for office. But that's what's going to happen. The party in office is going to be the ones that say, I was part of the Republicans or Democrats that saved Social Security. And that's what's going to happen. So anyway, that's all we got to say on Social Security. We're at the end of the first half of the show. Appreciate everybody listening. If you're in the car catching this on the way to church, then you can hop out to Apple Podcast or Spotify, and you can search the RITE Retirement Show and listen to the full episode. Appreciate everybody listening. If you'd like to call and set up a discovery session, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010. Again, 256-937-2010.
Are questions about your financial future, such as, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement last, keeping you up at night? Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's text VISIT to 256-937-2010 and schedule your consultation today.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
If lingering doubts like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement funds endure? Are on your mind? It's time to consult with Chris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010 to book your appointment and get the answers you need.
Thank you so much for joining us today, spending part of your day with us. You're listening to the RITE Retirement Show, and I'm Lou Ann Fulmer, of course, here with Chris Wallace, president of WG Financial Group. He is a certified financial planner and financial advisor at WG Financial Group. And then, of course, we have Graham Bauer on our show as well. And he is a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and an enrolled agent at the firm. So 256-937-2010. Remember, that's the phone number. You may call or text that number. And so excited to have you along with us today. So we talk about retirement planning on our show, right? And it can feel like a big deal when it's your retirement coming up. But who better to learn than from people who've actually done that? Retirees who've been there and done that. And so right now, Chris and Graham are going to take us through 5 super simple retirement planning tips from real retirees, people who have been there. So I think I'll give this one to you first, Chris, and you guys can just go back and forth. Give us tip number 5 from a real retiree. What would they say, or what have they said?
Yeah, well, you mentioned retirement's, a big deal. It is a big deal. There's a lot that goes on emotionally, psychologically, with your money, how you feel, what are you going to do with your day? So retirement is a big deal. But we would say, as you're prepping for retirement, I'll tell you how I do it, and then you can take from that whatever you want to take. So number one is you should try to live below your means, so you can spend less now so you can save more for later. And it's about balance and not really sacrifice. Okay, so there are famous people out there that, want you to live by eating TV dinners and you got to sell everything and do this. And that's just not the way that I do it. Okay. So my financial plan is I want to have my savings buckets, and I want to fill those buckets every year. And if those buckets are full, then that means that I'm going to hit my targets. I should be on track to retire sometime when I'm in my middle 60s, and I should be able to have a comfortable retirement from there. Everything else is spent making memories. So we talk about the making memories money. So, if I've hit my 401k max and I'm maxing my HSA, and I'm also putting some money into after-tax, kind of like brokerage account savings, then if there's money left over, then I can go on the vacations. I can take the kids. I can do the things while I'm still young and mobile, because I'm balancing, saving for retirement and then also making some of those memories today. So that is really tip number 5, is really live within. I won't even call it below your means. Mm-hmm. What I would say is live within your means. Make 100% sure, at the very bare minimum, as you're saving, that you're putting money into a 401k, at least getting the match. In my case, I want to make sure that I'm maxing it all the way out. So when I say maxing it out, what do I mean by that? Well, I've heard people say I'm maxing my 401k, and they'll tell me, like TSP, for example, federal employees say, well, I'm maxing it out. Well, like, okay, so you're putting in 23,000, or, no, I'm putting in enough to get the 5% match. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're not maxing it out. I'm fully funding mine, at even the catch up, because I'm over the age of 50. And, so that would be the one thing I would say, is just make sure you're hitting those targets, so that you can take the excess from that and make memories with your children.
Okay.
It's really interesting to see how everybody's priorities can be different on the topic, because there's the one group of people that maybe more falls into the like FIRE camp, the like financial independence, retire early, where maybe their goal is to I just want to retire as early as possible. I don't care if I have to make sacrifices today. But to be honest, I do find that to be a smaller group of people. There have been conversations I've had with a lot of people in the, maybe the 40s and 50s age range, but even sometimes like later 30s, 40s, early 40s, about, you're getting a good savings rate in right now. Maybe you're saving 15 or 20%, and you're on a really good track for retirement at, an age 60 or 62 or 58 or whatever the number is. And, maybe if you were willing to buckle down a little bit, even if it's not like huge sacrifices, and say, I'm going to increase that to 22% savings or 25% or something like that, you could get out 5 years earlier. But I found for a lot of people, the ability to make those memories today a lot of times does outweigh the, I want to retire a year or two earlier. Now, when you're 56, maybe you're like, well, maybe I should have buckled down a little bit more. I'm done working now, because it's obviously, more present minded than future minded. But, I agree that I don't think for a lot of people they have to sacrifice necessarily to hit those marks. But it's just about, what is the bigger priority? Is the bigger priority, I want to get out as soon as possible? Or is the bigger priority, I just want to get out at a normal retirement age and be able to make memories with, friends or spouses or family or whatever else.
Yeah. Also, I want to toss this in there. While you're working, I think psychologically it's easier to take that big trip. So back to my points of, hitting your savings targets. And then I think what you were saying was you could put even more away and maybe you could retire a little bit earlier. But I think also, there is that, right? But then if you, hit your savings targets and you take the kids on this big, trip to Europe or whatever, psychologically, I think it's easier because, you still have that faucet of income coming in from your job. So, taking that trip is a lot less stressful than if you were, say, 63, retired, and now you're pulling, 30,000, 20 to 30,000 out for this big family trip out of your retirement nest egg. And now even if you could do it, it's still psychologically going to be harder to do that versus, say, doing it at 57 while you still have a job. So I think that's why some people are like, yeah, I'm hitting my savings targets and I'm trying to make some memories with the excess. That's the way that I'm doing it personally. So you don't have to be like me, but hey, that's what I do.
Okay, we're going over retirement planning tips from real retirees. So counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first one was live below your means, or at least live within your means. And, very smart tips there, guys. What about tip number 4, Graham?
Yeah, so tip number 4 is about structuring your savings and just about regular savings using the tools that are provided to you, whether that's a 401k, Roth IRA, brokerage account, whatever else. And we touched on this a little bit with the last point, but, I think what can be really helpful here is a great start for someone, just starting out is obviously getting the match in your employer plan. There's really no reason not to do that unless you just literally cannot put away the 3 or 5% or whatever else without having to file bankruptcy or whatnot. So, I think that is a super important start. From there, like we sort of were talking about last time, I am personally a big fan of kind of backwards budgeting and figuring out what is that savings target that we need to get to. And then outside of that, once that's been set, then you look back kind of at the budget, because it's really hard to know, what all your expenses really are. It's easy to know what your rent is or your mortgage is, and it's easy to know like what your phone bill is and those fixed expenses, but anything variable, it's hard to get a good grip on it. So a lot of times it's a lot more helpful to just say, I'm going to put 15% in my 401k, and you just make that change and then, live on what's left. Whatever that is coming in, or say, I'm going to max out a Roth IRA, or I'm going to, do 10% in the 401k and max out a Roth IRA. For a lot of people, just the earlier you start, the better that it is. I hear all the time from people, Chris, I know you do too, that people just say, even people that did very well for themselves say, I just wish we had started earlier.
Yeah.
It's very common to hear that because, not that the fact that they didn't start earlier meant that they, couldn't retire at all or anything like that. But, they're just saying, man, we did a good job saving. We could have saved a lot more if we had made it a priority, even in a small amount early on. So the earliest time you can get started, the better. I ran into someone not too long ago who was in their early 30s and had just been, maxing out Roth IRAs since high school, or maybe not maxing out the whole time, but just doing small amounts from, paychecks through all that time. And I was very impressed. You think those small amounts, $100 a month or something, doesn't add up, but even over that course of time, it really adds up.
Yeah,
it does. One of the other things, in addition to using the types of accounts that are available to you, like some people don't have access to a 401k. So 401k is an excellent growth engine. The TSP is kind of the same way, because you can put a lot of money into it on an annual basis. So a lot of money goes in, it grows, you have a large amount at the end. But if you have just an IRA, you're capped at like the $7,000 a year. If you're in a simple, you can put in the low, like $13,000, $14,000 in that range in a simple IRA. So that's even less than the 401k. If you're in that situation, you have to figure out how to get more money in investments to kind of make up the differential. Because I would argue that I don't think you're going to be able to retire saving $7,000 in a Roth IRA. I just don't see someone today, looking at the, value of money, 30 years from now. I don't think they're going to be able to get there saving just $7,000 a year. So I think you got to be able to save more than that. And if you're using the tools and you don't have a 401k, you've got to figure out how to save maybe a little bit more money. The other thing I wanted to say here is get it automated. Like, make sure everything's automated, so you're not, having it come into your bank account and then you've got to push it out to whatever savings account or investment account. Make sure it's just automated. I think that'll help people as well. And then also just realize that, saving money, it takes time. And when you're younger, especially like nowadays, things are a lot more expensive than what they were just five years ago. And, you may not be able to max out a 401k until you're in your 40s or your 50s. But I would just encourage people to work up to that number. Always try to target, I would say, about 15% of their income going into savings. And of course, now I say 15%. If you waited until age 50 to start saving, 15% is probably not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to increase that percentage. And I think that goes back to kind of the point you just made about wishing, started. Some people say they wish they'd have started earlier.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely probably one of the, you hear that about a lot of things in life. My dad is a music teacher. He teaches guitar. And probably one of the most common things when, we'd be at church or, out in town somewhere and he met someone and told them what he did is people would say, oh, I wish I started playing when I was, 5.
That's what I say.
Yeah. They feel like it's too late to start. And it's not too late to start on those types of things. But just like if you never played guitar before and you pick it up for the first time at 30, it's going to be a lot harder than if you picked it up for the first time at 7 years old. And, you had more time or just time in general on your hands to work on it and more formative years. So it's not like, if you missed the boat early on, it's all doomed. And I do try to remind people that, a lot of times people do make up for some lost years later on when, especially, you're talking about like a couple who one person stayed home to, be with the kids and they were raising kids through elementary, middle, high school, college expenses, car insurance for all those people, health insurance for all those people. And then you get to a point where, maybe you're back to 2 incomes, all the kids are out of the house, you're making more than you ever have before. And you can kind of make up for some of that, but it's going to be a lot more on the back end rather than kind of a steady stream over time. But, that is the story that you end up hearing from a lot of people just because, if we've seen people come in with 6, 7, 8 kids and that can be a lot of extra expenses for that time period in life. But, it's not all doom and gloom, as long as you're able to kind of make up for that on the back end.
Yeah, big shout out to Graham's dad too, by the way. Graham's dad's a radio listener, podcast listener, actually. His dad is an amazing guitar player. So I don't want to sell that short. He's Graham said he's a music teacher. No, he's a very good guitar player, and Graham is as well. So maybe some of our people that come in should just tell Graham to bring his guitar. Graham does actually several music instruments, and I won't embarrass him, but he's highly talented. He's not only good financially, he's very good musically as
well. I see a concert in our future on our radio show.
Well, his
you
parents
and your dad.
Yeah, his parents actually played at our Christmas party.
They have before. Maybe the show needs a musical guest, like the Tonight Show or whatever.
A little intro. Maybe he can create us a new intro. I don't know. Big shout out to him. Though. He's an awesome guy. Graham's got a great family.
That. Okay, cool. All right, so let's move on to tip number 3 from a real retiree. What do we have?
So invest in your health is this one, and I cannot tell you enough how important that is to really, and not only invest your money, but just invest some of your money into yourself to keep yourself healthy. So stay active. You want to eat well. I'm a big advocate of going to get regular checkups, like every year. So men, if you're listening, go get your physicals. There is, just the medical means are out there to be able to check on yourself to kind of capture whether or not you're doing well. From a year-to-year basis, and hopefully with the blood work and the physical and the urine and all the stuff that they do, you can kind of catch things that are trending up or down. If down's bad, if up's bad, whatever way you'll know because you're getting your physical, every year to be able to keep up with that. So invest in your health. Like I said, stay active. Men need to be eating a lot of protein. Like we should be getting at least 1 gram per lean body mass that we have.
Wow,
so,
really?
For myself, that's about
that's a lot.
About 150.
How do you get all
protein. That? Well, it's hard, Luann. You have to really make a focus on it. So I think as we age, this is men and women, you just start to lose muscle mass, and there is longevity. The more muscle you have, the better things are from a blood sugar perspective. It also increases your longevity. And one way to keep your muscle mass up is to make sure you're getting enough protein. And it's hard. Like for myself, I'll kind of walk through my routine. Not that anybody cares, but maybe it'll help some people out there. Every morning I have a protein shake that has about 30 grams of protein. So I do 1 shake. I don't do like 5 shakes a day. That's not what you want to do. I'll eat some eggs. So eggs are about 7 grams of protein per egg. So eat 3 or 4 eggs. I don't always do the yolk. Sometimes it's just the egg whites. Try to eat a lot of chicken breast, lean red meat, to get protein in there. And I don't want to say that I'm getting 150 grams every day, but I'm trying to get above at least 100 for sure and getting as close to that 150 grams as possible. Myself, because I'm a business owner, I think you're aware of this. I did go through what's called like an executive physical, where they did a deeper dive into my body, because I feel like I have a lot of families that rely on me, not only my own family, but the client families that we have that I serve. And, running a business, I wanted to do a little extra and go through some full body MRIs and things like that and make sure that, that I'm in good shape, and all was good. So I did that recently. But, it's a big deal to invest in your health. What you don't want to do is, have something crop up in blood work that you could have caught 3, 4, 5 years earlier, but you just didn't go because you're like, I don't have the time, or I feel good. No, take the time. Most insurances cover a physical, and, have some extra things pulled. I always have my vitamin D pulled extra and just kind of keep, track of all that stuff. So it's important.
Yeah. Health, very important. So you can live a long life in retirement and enjoy everything that you want to do. So we're talking about tips from real retirees, people who have been there, and they're giving us 5 tips. We're ready for tip number 2, Graham.
Yeah, tip number 2 is about not rushing into retirement. And I think you can think about this from a couple different perspectives. I'll start with on the non-financial side. I really think, when someone is thinking about going into retirement, it's getting closer, you shouldn't be rushing into it without not only a financial plan, but also maybe a plan of some goals and some things that you want to do in retirement, kind of the why behind it all. And I know the very obvious answer is, I just don't want to work anymore. I don't want to have to be, at the office this time, or I don't want to have to do this or that or the other, or have a boss anymore. And all those things are totally understandable. But I do think it's super helpful to, be saying, okay, well, maybe my why is we're gonna be helping out a lot with the grandkids, and there's more on the way, and we're gonna do a lot there, or we're gonna be volunteering with our church, or maybe there's some kind of hobby that I haven't had time to do that I want to really pursue. It can be a lot of different things, but I think prior to retirement, it's a really good thing to be thinking about, before you pull the trigger. And then on the financial side, you always have to think about not just from a can I afford it, but there are some people that we talk to that have situations where they're looking at it. And I had a conversation the other day with a couple of clients, and we were talking about retiring now versus a little bit later, and the difference was really the spending capacity. It wasn't like, can you retire today, but it was like, if you retire in 2 years from now, it might be another $1,000 a month of spending capacity versus retiring today with, $1,000 less than you would have in 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the question becomes, is that 2 years extra in retirement worth the extra $1,000 of spending? And that answer really just depends on the person. How much do you enjoy your job? How much purpose does that bring you? Are you in a rush to get out? Or are you just kind of happy to be done whenever you kind of decide it's time, or when you have the TBD 2 bad days or whatnot. But, it depends on each individual person, the answer to that question. But I think it's a good thing to be thinking about, because not only does, 2 years less in retirement, or 2 years less, 2 years more of working rather, lead to 2 years less of withdrawing out of your savings, but it's 2 more years of contributions as well. Usually mm-hmm. when people are contributing, pretty high dollar amounts. So the swing is pretty big again, but time is also invaluable for a lot of people. So that's a question that we try to help people with, but a meeting like that usually ends with, us saying something along the lines of, here's all the data. Here's what it would look like. You and your spouse go home and figure out what the best option of these is for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think through most of the tests that I've ever taken, which I've taken a bazillion, it seems like I know you have as well. The quickest way to rescue a financial plan or to be able to spend more is to just work a little bit longer. Yeah, to your points there. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. All right, then we are ready. Drum roll for tip number 1 of from retirees. What would they say?
Yeah, so this is a no-brainer for a lot of people, I think, and most people would guess it. If I said, "Oh, what's the number one reason or number one tip?" and it would be to start saving early. And we touched on this earlier by feedback that we've received from people. Graham talked about, he's had a lot of people say to him, "I wish I'd have started earlier.
Yeah,
I wish I'd have found you earlier." Things like that. Starting out early is really important. If you're younger, find a couple of good people to follow that are quality individuals, because the reality is this: when you're younger and you don't have as much saved, it is harder to work with a financial advisor on like a one-on-one basis, because you're just kind of getting started out. So, kind of pick some people that you like to follow, maybe on social media. Maybe it's us listening to our podcast but start early, start finding that mentor and start saving early, because you'll thank yourself later on. I mean, once you start to see your money grow, your net worth grow, you're tracking your net worth and it's going up every single year. That's a really good feeling. And, I can't encourage people enough to start early. It is one of the things that I've talked to my kids about. It was not talked to me in the way mm-hmm. that I talk to my kids about it. Mm-hmm. And frankly, one of the questions that I ask people that come into the office is, when you were growing up, who taught you about money, who taught you to save, who taught you to invest? And the overwhelming majority of the time, the answer I get is this: my family really didn't talk about money. We either grew up poor or we grew up middle class or whatever the case may be, but my family really just didn't talk about money. And I'm telling you, if you're listening to the show as a parent today, maybe you're in your 50s like I am, or maybe you're a grandparent, it's important to talk about money with your kids and grandkids, because learning to save money is a behavior that is, I feel like it's a learned behavior. Mm-hmm. Because we live in a society where we're on social media and we see so-and-so got the new car, the new house, or or whatever the new thing is, and we want to go buy it. We have Amazon on our phone. I mean, I was telling Graham that while I was out of town, my zipper on my backpack that I carry my computer in, it broke. And so I'm, on Amazon from the Minneapolis St. Paul airport, ordering a new backpack. It's how easy it is. It's at our fingertips, and everything can be bought, very, very easily. So yeah, I don't know. You gotta pay attention to that kind of stuff, and just, watch how easily you spend money in some cases, and really focus on savings, and just make sure that, families are communicating that, because again, I've heard it so many times, Graham, that, that their family just didn't talk about money. And I that's the way I grew up. So you kind of, in a lot of cases, you'll, just do what your parents did in a lot of cases. And if it's stuff money in savings, well, that's good. You're saving money, but you need to learn how to get that money to actually work for you and grow. And that takes the investing behavioral change that I think a lot of people have to make that transition to. Yeah, no, it's a very, it's a very, I feel like, hush topic in a lot of families. And, it is. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think parents maybe don't want to stress their kids out or make them feel like they're intertwining them in their finances. And I'm not necessarily advocating you like giving your kids a balance sheet of all of your assets and saying, oh, this is this and this is where we have all this, but just some basic financial education of, this is, how we save, and this is how you should save. And yeah, teaching behavior early. We do have, quite a few clients who, will have their kids even just come talk to us, because they're clients of ours. Mm-hmm. And so their kids will come and we'll just do complimentary kind of meetings with them. They're younger, just give them some pointers on how to start out, make sure that they're taking advantage of the opportunities they have. Cause a lot of it is just education. And when you're in the industry, it's easy to forget that a lot of the public just doesn't fully understand the options out there. But, people are busy, they have lives, and they don't spend all their time researching personal finance. So sometimes you kind of just need someone else to come in and say, hey, here's what you should be doing. Here's how to do it. And, just kind of help teach that habit. Yeah. I think when parents, talk to their kids, sometimes their kids don't hear it the same, because they're watching the social media stuff today. And so just a warning to be careful. That's why we do the real talk. Be careful that you're not sold by reels out there if you're younger listening to the show. Just be careful of that. Make sure it's credible. And then also understand, I think it's probably the most important thing I can say on this show, like your wealth is not going to happen overnight. Like you're not going to, I would say 99.9999% of people aren't going to invest and become a millionaire overnight. It takes time. And you have to have the patience and the diligence to kind of stick with that and stick with your plan, even as a young person, to continue investing, because it does take time, and you're not going to buy Bitcoin and become a millionaire overnight, even though some people did that. The large majority of people out there today that are millionaires today have saved, and they've done that over time by sticking to their plan. And I just kind of wanted to say that as we kind of close out the show here. So, Luann, it's been a great show.
Yeah, that's it. Great.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back. It's been great, you guys. Good stuff.
Yeah, so if you want to set up a discovery session, you can give us a call at 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010. Give us a call for your discovery session. Hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.